Please stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have just a couple items tonight. We have election results. Trish, do you read the totals or do we accept them as official since they are?
I think that's good enough.
Okay, we have the official election results in hand, and though I think everyone knows that Mr. Cox has been elected mayor. Carol has been re-elected as Carol Sluice as a collector. The Susan Langer, Ward 1 Alderwoman, and the Ward 2 David Fairber won, and then we have the 2%, 2% extra sales tax, which I don't think is on here. Anyway, do I have a motion to accept these results?
So moved.
Second?
No. Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That's official. I would like to have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move to adjourn. I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Over here, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion is adjourned. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful. I appreciate it. Bruce, best of luck. Let's see if we can get it. Camera guy's not ready. There you go. All right. It's yours now, my friend.
Almost. Yeah, I think we're gonna do two at a time. Bruce and Susan, please. If you will raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Susan Langer,
Do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution,
that I will support the Constitution,
the laws of the United States,
the laws of the United States,
the state of Missouri,
the state of Missouri,
and the ordinances of the city of Herman.
and the ordinances of the city of Harsh,
And I will faithfully demean myself
and I will faithfully demean myself
and perform all the duties of the office
and perform all the duties of the office
for which I have been elected.
for which I have been elected.
And I possess all qualifications
And I possess all qualifications
prescribed for said office.
prescribed for said office,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wait, don't sit down. Come behind the desk here for the new administration altogether.
You're part of it. Get up there. What's my age, height?
It's already-
Hey, somebody is working out pretty good.
Now we do have the collector getting sworn in as well. Carol and Dave. Bruce, if you will sign that for me, that will make that official. You'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Dave Farrell,
Do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution,
that I will support the Constitution,
the laws of the United States,
the laws of the United States,
the state of Missouri,
the state of Missouri,
and the ordinances of the city of Herman.
and the ordinances of the city of Herman,
And I will faithfully demean myself
and I will faithfully demean myself
and perform all the duties of the office
and perform all the duties of the office
for which I have been elected.
for which I have been elected,
And I possess all qualifications
and I possess all qualifications
prescribed for said office.
prescribed to said office.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations to you. For me as well. Okay. And Dave, if you'll sign that for me. Please.
It's not my pen.
Right here.
Yes.
Monty?
I believe so.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Newly elected officials. First on the agenda is a proclamation of appreciation for Mayor Kerber.
Never been on this side of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, if I can read it, okay. Proclamation and appreciation for Mayor Dr. Robert C. Kerber. Whereas Dr. Robert C. Kerber has served as mayor of the city of Herman during the period of April 11, 2016 through June 8, 2020. And whereas Dr. Robert C. Kerber has given of himself and his time to the city of Herman, does express the appreciation. What did I do, skip something? Sorry.
You'll get a lot better.
During his term of office to the extent well in excess of the usual call of duty. And whereas the Board of Aldermen of the City of Herman, Missouri desires to and hereby does express the appreciation of such board and the citizens of said city to Dr. Robert C. Kerber for his term in public service. Now therefore, it is hereby proclaimed by the President of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Herman, Missouri, on behalf of the Board of Aldermen and other officials and citizens of the City of Herman, that a public expression of appreciation shall be and hereby is given this day to Robert C. Kerber. Be it further proclaimed that the original of this proclamation be presented to Dr. Robert C. Kerber in recognition of his esteem in which he is held. In testimony, I have hereunto set my hand and caused it be affixed the seal of the City of Herman, Missouri, this 8th day of June, 2020. Bruce Cox, President of the Board of Aldermen.
My friend,
Good luck.
okay. Good luck to you.
A little stutter in there, sorry. Okay, next on the agenda would be the motion to elect the President of the Board of Aldermen. I was a former President of the Board of Aldermen, so you,
Can we do that without the fourth alderman?
yes. He will not be appointed until the following week. So it's up to you all to recommend and vote on that. That's not mine. The president of the Board of Aldermen is the person that if for some reason I cannot be here to run the meeting, has to step up and run the meeting, basically. Pretty much the bottom line, isn't it?
Well, Dave, you've been here the longest, so you have more experience. You're really willing.
Other than that, the requirements don't seem to be much, so I can probably handle it.
You doing that in a
I make
motion?
a motion that we elect Dave as president.
Motion has been made,
Second?
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You vote on yourself?
Okay, I didn't know how I'm supposed to vote on it.
No nays.
You can vote, Dave.
I can't, then aye, I guess.
So moved. Very good. What about our secretary, or what do we do?
I'm gonna defer to Dave.
Okay, so is Valerie right here?
Yes, she is.
Uh, Typically, when we have applicants for conditional use permits or any other zoning hearing, we have a court reporter here to take everything down. She's not here yet, or I don't know if there's a mix-up or on her calendar or what. With your permission, though, we'll go ahead and proceed. You know, her purpose would be to take down everything that's said by everybody, and then she prepares a transcript, and then we can offer that transcript to you or use it ourselves, the city, to confirm exactly what was said. But these hearings, like all Board of Aldermen meetings, are televised, and we have a video recording, and we have an audio recording as well, so I don't think there's any risk of
I'm okay.
of an issue as to who said what, okay?
Okay.
So if you're okay, we can proceed. Mayor, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. We'll go ahead and call the hearing to order on Valerie Wright and Wright Place Rentals LLC's application for a conditional use permit to operate an owner-unoccupied guest house at 215 East Fifth Street in the R1 Single Family Residential District. And this matter is being called this 8th day of June 2020 at approximately 7:10 p.m. And my name is Dave Polite. I'm the city attorney.
So Dave, I'm sorry, Carol said we just saw her come in. Should we wait now that she's here?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay.
She's here.
Well, it was her, but I wasn't for sure.
Probably behind your combine or something.
That's highly possible.
Can we just take a quick little pause?
Let me catch my breath, is that what you're saying?
Or maybe, would it be okay if you gave like his mayor's report while we're waiting for her to set up?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
All right, I will do my first mayor's report. You'll have to bear with me. Not going to be very long. I'll keep it short. I just want to thank everyone for your vote and support. And you haven't had trouble because my family's here. A big thank you to my family for their support and being here tonight. My son, Brian and Brent could not make it, but I know they're thinking of me tonight. On a serious note, I will do the best I can to help make Herman the best little town in America. I'll be proactive with getting the street initiative underway in the next few months, along with Mark and the street supervisor. I think the biggest part of the infrastructure in 18th Street's underway now. And then after we get the BAI report, we will be able to see what the future might be for our utilities. I'll be working hard to do something about housing, and it's not going to happen quickly. I have a lot of ideas and I need to contact a lot of people, so be patient on that one. My other goal is to try and fill empty commercial buildings that are in Herman, and again, that's just not an easy thing to accomplish, especially with everything going on in the world right now. I have set up a Facebook page this afternoon, so anybody, it's Bruce Cox, Mayor of Herman, Missouri, just MO. I will post developments, news that affect the city, and anybody can ask me questions anytime that I will try and answer as soon as I possibly can. On a good news note, the city of Herman has received our sales tax report in for April, and it was only down 13% from last year. We were really expecting 30% or more decrease. So this is really great news for the city and the money aspect of our town. Again, thank you for everyone for your support, and thank you for being here this evening. She's not ready yet.
I can do mine.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. From that point on, let's go ahead and do the city administrator's report.
Okay. I had a phone meeting with Burns and McDonald and MoDOT Aviation regarding the preliminary plans for the airport apron. The hospital is done with the clinic building on West 6th Street. I have contacted the demo contractor and told him he could start anytime. Haven't heard back. The industrial park tank has been down for painting and it's finally done and being filled today. City crews continue working on the water line on West 7th Street and the bid package for 18th Street out here, the intersection, curb and gutter, water line connection, stormwater improvements and paving will be let this week just for the lower section from the intersection down to 100. And then construction should start in about a month. That's my report, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there
It's too
anything,
fast again, right?
is there anything on the AT&T?
I sent them emails, I went up there, I have not heard anything, other than it's ready to be fired up.
I had a tough question, Mayor. I need a plug. Is there a plug?
Oh, yeah, right
Right there,
there.
okay. All right. I'm just gonna throw you off tonight. This would be the worst night you'd have with a court reporter, because your regular one is
You're fine.
always on time.
On Mark's report there, the city now owns that doctor's building. That building has usable stuff in it. We need to do something with that. Once that track hoe shows up, everything in that building's going in the back of the dump truck with it, but there are usable things in there. And I'd really like to see something happen.
I think it did, thanks to Carol and some of the other staff, they cleared out a whole bunch of the usable office supplies.
Glad to hear that.
Desks and
they
such.
can't
I just hate to see that stuff
You'll
wasted.
see when you go into the front office.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the stuff will be used here in the office.
Glad to hear it.
All right, am I ready to move?
Yeah, I'm just gonna, you can just turn your nameplate towards me, guys, so I can make sure I see everybody's nameplate. There, if you just turn yours towards
Oh,
me.
he's not here.
I just like that.
Oh, he's not gonna hit, okay.
Bruce don't got a name pretty
I got one.
He's got a
Just not
name.
as pretty.
good. Okay.
One second. All right, go ahead.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go on the record for this hearing, which is commencing at 7:16 PM on June 8th, 2020, here in the Board of Alderman Chambers at City Hall. I'm Dave Polite, the city attorney. I'm also usually asked to go over some of these housekeeping notes and procedure items. We don't expect this to be a contentious hearing, but we go through it all, no matter what's expected. We are having a hearing to consider the application for a conditional use permit filed by Valerie Wright, Right Place Rentals LLC, to operate a guest house at 215 East Fifth Street, which is in the R1 Single Family Residential District. The application was reviewed by the city's Planning and Zoning Commission on May 20, 2020. The commission passed a motion recommending that the Board of Aldermen approve the application with certain conditions as described in their minutes. The commission made its recommendation to this board within 30 days of the date of its hearing. At least 15 days notice of the time and place of this hearing was published in the Herndon Advertiser Courier newspaper. When this hearing is concluded, the Board of Aldermen shall provide its decision on the application within 15 days. If the board finds that the special requirements for a conditional use permit are satisfied, it will make an order directing the zoning inspector to issue a written permit to the applicant. According to Municipal Code 420.730, the board may impose conditions on the permit to ensure that the use will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or welfare of the citizens of Herman, and the use will not injure the use and enjoyment of neighboring properties, that there will be adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities, that the use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding properties, that the use will not cause traffic congestion, and that the requirements for public services such as police and fire protection will not be substantially in excess of those individual demands of adjacent land uses. The Board of Aldermen may grant a conditional use permit to last for such a period of time as it finds to be in the public interest. This is intended to be a relatively formal hearing, similar in procedure to a trial in court. It is on the record and a transcript is being prepared. The applicant will have an opportunity to present her case. If there are any documents that the applicant desires the board to rely on, I would invite her to submit those as exhibits. If the applicant has any witnesses whom she desires to speak, this will be allowed. If the applicant is represented by an attorney whom the applicant wishes to speak on her behalf, this also will be allowed. Following the presentation or while any person is speaking, the board may ask questions. After the applicant has submitted her application, the board will ask for testimony from others present in the room. The mayor reserves the right to limit each speaker's time. At the conclusion of all testimony and comments, the board may deliberate and then vote on the issue. Whether the application is approved or denied will be carried by a vote of the majority of the board members who are present this evening. And we have a few exhibits. Exhibit 1 is the conditional use permit application. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication confirming publication in the Advertiser Courier newspaper. Exhibit 3 is the notice of public hearing that was published. Exhibit 4 is a proposed property management agreement between Wright Place Rentals LLC and Valerie Wright. Exhibit 5 is a completed inspection report for the guest house that is the subject of the hearing. And Exhibit 6 is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes. And Exhibit 7 would be the entire Code of Ordinances for the City of Herman, Missouri. Mayor Cox, would you agree to accept these exhibits into the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We may proceed, Ms. Wright, if you have anything to say or would like to go ahead and...
I don't have anybody with me. I just want to say this is the first time I've done this. So I'm a newbie, so if anybody has any help for me, that would be great. Any suggestions, but I'm asking you to approve this for me, please.
Any discussion?
I mean,
Questions?
it was a guest house before, it's gonna be a guest house again. It really isn't near any other residential areas, I really don't have a problem with it.
And she's met all the qualifications that the planning and zoning, or landmark, excuse me, has requested.
Unless someone has an objection, I'll move to accept.
May I bring one thing to your attention? Originally on her application, she had requested occupancy of 14. And the P&Z recommended 6 to 10 based on what the code enforcement officer would recommend, and he did recommend 12. So
Right.
actually 12 is the number that will go
Right,
on the record.
that's on this one. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve guest house.
We have a motion to approve, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Well done. Next request,
All right.
it's on your,
So I'm just writing these, it's 2 Ward 2, I guess?
Pardon?
2 Ward 2?
Yes.
Okay.
We're both working on
Okay.
it.
And that will conclude the record for the Valerie Wright hearing. Are you ready for the next
Yes,
one?
sir.
So now we are going on the record for a public hearing, which is called to order at 7:24 p.m. on June 8, 2020 at the Board of Aldermen Meeting Room at Herman City Hall. This hearing is conducted to consider the application for a conditional use permit filed by Missouri Vacation Rentals LLC to operate a guest house at 210 East 4th Street in the R2 two-family residential district. The application was reviewed by P&Z on May 20, 2020, and the commission passed a motion recommending the Board of Aldermen approve the application with certain conditions. At least 15 days notice of the time and place of this hearing was published in the Advertiser Courier newspaper. After this hearing is concluded, the board shall provide its decision within 15 days. If the board finds that requirements for a conditional use permit are satisfied, it shall make an order directing the zoning inspector to issue the permit. According to Code Section 42730, the board may impose certain conditions to ensure that the use will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or welfare of the citizens of Herman, that the use will not injure the use and enjoyment of neighboring properties, that there are adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities, that the use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding properties for permitted uses, that such use will not cause traffic congestion, and the requirements for public services such as police and fire protection will not be substantially in excess of the individual demands of adjacent land uses. The Board of Aldermen may grant the conditional use permit for such a period of time as it sees fit. This is intended to be a relatively formal hearing, similar in procedure to a trial in court. It's on the record and a transcript is being prepared. The applicant will have the opportunity to present his case. If there are any documents that he desires the board to rely on, I would invite him to submit those as exhibits. If the applicant has any witnesses, this will be allowed. And if the applicant is represented by an attorney whom he wishes to speak on his behalf, this also will be allowed. Following the presentation or while any person is speaking, the board may ask questions. After the applicant has submitted his application, the board may ask for testimony from others present in the room. The mayor reserves the right to limit each speaker's time. At the conclusion of all testimony and comments, the board may deliberate and vote on the issue. Whether the application is approved or denied will be carried by a vote of the majority of the board members who are present this evening. We have some exhibits. Here, Exhibit 1 is the conditional use permit application. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication from the Advertiser Courier. Exhibit 3 is the notice of public hearing that was published. Exhibit 4 is a proposed property management agreement between the applicant and Jose Bugarin. And Exhibit 5 is the completed inspection report prepared by the city's code enforcement officer. Exhibit 6 is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes, and Exhibit 7 is the entire municipal code of the city of Herman, Missouri. And Mayor, unless you have any special instructions or requests, I would say Mr. Schmelz or Mr. Helfrich, you may proceed.
You have the floor.
Hello, my name is Ed Schmelz. I'm requesting that you guys will approve my conditional use permit tonight, previously passed by the Planning and Zoning Board with two modifications. The first one is on the original application. I believe I had 8 guests that I was asking for, and with the code enforcement inspection, I believe we were at 10. So there's one minor modification I would like to make. The second modification is I would like you guys to reconsider the 10-mile manager radius. I did turn in a management contract. To be honest, that was kind of my plan B. We currently have a manager that manages all 10 of our other properties. She lives in New Haven. We have a great rapport with her. She's done a fantastic job for years and years that she's been working with us. Unless I'm unaware, I don't really think we've had any serious police complaints, neighbor complaints on our properties. Like I said, if there has been, I'm not aware of them, but I think she's done a fantastic job. And at this point, I would like, I think New Haven's close enough. I really feel that she does a great job, and I hate to have somebody else who I'm not too familiar with take on that role. So those are the two things I'd like to ask you guys to reconsider.
Does she manage your other properties here in Herman?
Yes, sir.
The reason we have the 10-mile radius is in case of an emergency, that they would be able to be contacted and be here as quick as possible. That's why we have the 10-mile radius.
But that 10-mile radius, I believe, is only in R1.
It's R1, did you say? Yes, you go.
Yes, I'm sorry. I believe it's only in R1, I think.
For clarification, R1 prohibits guest houses, provided, however, that if you had a guest house in existence before June of 2016, that guest house would be allowed to be continued, I believe, as was the case with Ms. Wright's application right before this one. However, in order for that guest house use to continue, the owner has to show that there is a management agreement in place with someone who is within a 10-mile radius of Herman. Okay, so that is the only place in the code that mentions 10 miles. This is the first applicant that we have had since we passed our new guest house regulations and ordinance back in January, February, whenever we passed that, Tricia. And I think that planning and zoning and this board historically has mentioned a 10-mile radius and wanted to include a 10-mile radius in that R1 provision that I said for the reasons that Ms. Langer stated. And I think it would be legal for this board to impose a 10-mile radius or accept Mr. Schmelz's proposal if it wants to, because under the conditional use permit code section, you do have the ability to impose such conditions on this permit as you believe are necessary for the health, welfare, and benefit of the citizens of Herman, Missouri. So if that's didn't thoroughly confuse everybody. Short answer to your question, Mayor Cox, is you're right. It's 10 miles exists in the R1 section.
But the reason it's called a conditional use permit is we set the conditions.
Correct.
And the way I kind of referred to the ordinance today is in R2, places, guest houses, let's say, are permitted in R2 as long as it's permitted in R1. So if the R1 ones don't follow that 10-mile rule, then they would not be granted the conditional purpose or use. So therefore, I say it applies to R2 just by following the R1 rules.
I think what you may be driving at is an old zoning code construction method that says that if you have something that is a permitted use in R1, then that use is automatically permitted in R2. In fact, our code says that. The very first thing it says in R2 is any use that's permitted in R1. So, and I think that that was mentioned at the planning and zoning hearing as well. I don't really think that applies here because the way it's mentioned in R1, the way it starts is guest houses are prohibited, period. Provided, however, that if you had a guest house in existence prior to June 2016, you may continue that use if you have a manager within 10 miles. So I can't say that a guest house with a manager within 10 miles is a permitted use in R2, because that's not what R1 says. But having said that, again, if you think a 10-mile radius is reasonable and necessary to protect the welfare and benefit of the Herman citizens, that's your prerogative.
I would say we should go on because the 10-mile radius did come from P&Z wanting to have that. And I think we start making exceptions, and we're going to have to accept for everybody in town that has one. So I think we should go along with it.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. If I may say something, at the P&Z board, they told me that it was an ordinance to have a manager within 10 miles in an R2, that it was passed years ago, 2016. I really think they were misreading it. So I don't think they were making a recommendation. I don't want to speak for them, but I don't think they were making a recommendation based on what they wanted. They thought that it was already a rule. So that's why I came tonight with this request that we reconsider that.
Well, a few years ago, we set that limit, and there was a very good reason for it. I mean, it's just, in an emergency, I'm sorry, New Haven's too far away. 10 miles was discussed. I mean, we discussed several different distances that came to the 10-mile rule. This was approved by planning and zoning with the 10-mile. I think we ought to stick with it.
And I can read what was said there because I have the minutes. It says Frank Tennant made a motion to recommend approve the conditional use permit 2020-02 at Schmelz Missouri Vacation Rentals LLS for an owner unoccupied guest house located at 210 East 4th Street in the R2 two-family residential district with a maximum occupancy of 8, provided that an inspection is performed and that all the requirements are met in the zoning section 420.050 and any other zoning codes regulation. A signed contract with the manager within 10 miles of the guest house. This should be completed by June 8, 2020 Board of Alderman meeting. Josh Schmidt seconded the motion with unanimous approval by the commission members.
That was definitely a recommendation, and I did ask the question at that meeting, because I had called the city years ago and said, hey, is this 10-mile radius, is that a R1, R2, or which does that apply to? And I was told it was an R1. So at the P&Z meeting, I said, doesn't that only apply to R1? And they said, no, it applies to everything. So I just want to make sure we're looking at the right things here. And I get it's a conditional use permit. You guys can put whatever conditions on it that you want, and that's totally fine. And that's why I do have a backup plan, you know, with the current management agreement I have. I would just like to use my current manager, who I'm very comfortable with, who is up here several times a week and on the weekends. I'm sorry.
And they already manage how many places here?
10.
In what areas?
All around 10. We have 10 houses in Herman.
So, I mean, presents a dilemma. I mean, he's
Yes,
already
it
got
does.
10 of them that is approved, and now you're going to disapprove one.
But when we look at what we have in our ordinance, all of them need to have someone within 10 miles. So every time one of these comes up from now on, they're going to have someone within 10 miles.
Yes, sir. Mayor, before, Mayor?
Your name?
My name is Ryan Helfrich. Lori knows me. I've got a memorandum that I prepared this evening. Congratulations, Mayor.
Thank you.
Alderman Sherman. Alderman,
I moved that for her.
how you doing? I'll give a copy of this to Lori as well. You can read it as well. So, Mr. Smells owns several properties in town. He also owns many, many other properties around the surrounding area. He is a professional real estate developer. This is what he does for a living. He has managers throughout the area, including one that happens to reside in New Haven, Missouri. There is no statutory requirement in your ordinances that mandate that a manager must live within 10 miles of a guest house, whether that be an R1, except for the specific exception that Mr. Philippe discussed earlier. There's no requirement in R2, R3, commercial, etc. Mr. Schmelz has been told, and it's been explained to him by the P&Z board and others in town, that the 10-mile restriction on a manager is a requirement. As it relates to a conditional use permit, this body, the P&Z board, they could limit it to 5 miles, 2 miles, if they wanted to. They can make it 8 miles, they can make it 13 miles. They can make it 25 miles. And that is the biggest support for my argument that you guys should embrace the discretion that you guys have, okay? Don't take a cookie cutter approach when you're approving these newly required conditional use permits that just became required as of, February 10th of this year in R2s. Okay, think ahead a little bit. Folks like Mr. Schmelz, professional developers, he has the resources available. He has the infrastructure already set up, as Mayor Cox referenced earlier. He has 8 to 10 properties here in town that run seamlessly. The difference between having a person live in town that is new to Mr. Schmelz, new to his business operation, and a person that's been with Mr. Schmelz for a decade that lives in New Haven, which would you choose? Okay? Don't get stuck with the 10-mile radius because you think you have to. You do not have to. It is not a statutory requirement.
I would vouch for Mr. Gagarin being his manager.
I've known Jose a long time.
And the built-in resources that allow you to meet the expectations where an individual owner may not, is because the 10, the experience, or...
It's all of that wrapped up. Mr. Schmelz is different. Look, if we want to back up a little bit, what's the real reason why we would want a 10-mile radius limitation? We don't want a St. Louis investor, a Jefferson City investor, a Kansas City investor who is a one-off owner of 1 or 2 properties in town but lives an hour or 2 away. If something goes wrong, it's going to take a while to get there. We want that person to have somebody local. Mr. Schmelz is local. He graduated from Union High School. He's been here his whole life. He's developing properties in this county, Franklin County, and in all the surrounding counties. Okay, he has the resources. That's what I mean by that. He has the resources. The business structure is already there to allow him to meet if there's an emergency that pops up. He's going to be able to be there, or one of his people will be able to be there. Just as quick as somebody that lives 10 miles away and it might be in town, but they're new. Okay, that's my point with the resources.
I make a motion to approve it with 10 people, but to keep the 10-mile radius.
Have a motion on the floor?
10 people, I didn't know.
He wants to go from 8 people to
Oh,
10.
Bob
and-
checked it.
And Bob checked it and
You can
said
have
10 would be okay.
I'll second that motion.
Have a second? Your motion is to approve it with,
With those, yes, with the
With the
stipulation that it goes to
10
10.
people and 10-mile radius.
And 10-mile radius.
the 10-mile range.
Yes, sir.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Okay, is there any citizens' comments?
Yeah, that'll go ahead and close the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, is there any citizens' comments? We'll move on to ordinances. Mr. Police,
Yes, sir.
bill number 2020-13.
The first bill for you to consider on for first reading would be an ordinance authorizing and directing the execution of the municipal services contract between the City of Herman, Missouri and Lee Regal, essentially a renewal of the contract that was approved last year.
I make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Ordinance 202013 approved.
Next on for first reading is bill number 2020-14. It would be an ordinance to authorize the execution of a municipal services and material contract by and between the City of Herman, Missouri and AgriCycle for tub grinding services.
Any discussion? Have a motion.
I move Bill 2020-14 first read.
Have a second.
Second.
First and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. So moved. There's been a request, because this is on a timely matter, correct? Yes, sir. We need to do a second reading of this ordinance.
Bill number 2020-14 for second reading, an ordinance to authorize the execution of a municipal services and material contract by and between the City of Herman, Missouri and AgriCycle for tub grinding services.
Have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve second reading.
Second. We have a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
No nays? Approved. Next.
And next is bill number 2020-15 for first reading, an ordinance to amend section 500.020C of the municipal code to require that address numbers be at least 4 inches in height.
Go for it.
We have some discussion on that? Tom?
I guess, first of all, I'd like to know why you think it's necessary to amend the original ordinance.
Mr. Shermer, you were the one who brought it up, so.
The ordinance we had was 51 years old, and I personally found, when I campaigned door to door, a lot of residences and buildings had no numbers, and some of the numbers, why the old ordinance was 2.5 inches tall, and they were maybe placed on the mailbox on by the front door. Our numbers were missing. Also, the city building inspector, Lee Regal, is behind also. He has tried previously to get this changed, not much luck. Our code enforcement officer told me the same thing, that it's hard to, and part of his inspection is to write down house numbers and to be able to read them from the street. And also, my proposal there is to help aid first responders, so they can find the places during an emergency, whether it be law enforcement, for disturbance, fire, or ambulance. In case of an ambulance where somebody's having a myocardial infarction, seconds count. So that's why we wanted to amend it to bring up the date from 1969.
I understand that, and just driving around, and you're probably correct that I would guess at least 75% of buildings and residents have smaller or no house addresses at all. Now, if the purpose is for emergencies, is it not true, and Bruce, maybe you can answer this, that 911 goes by GPS and not by address? Or visual address, they would put in a location?
I can't speak for 911, I don't know what their operation is.
I know Bruce,
Firehouse? How does that
We
work?
do not use a GPS, no.
So,
We look for an address, as far as fire department's concerned.
okay.
Or out in the country, it's an ENS number, but in the city, it's an
Right,
address.
right. Well, and not to make anybody look bad, the firehouse address is 2 inches tall, okay, and visible from the street, okay? I went and measured this afternoon. And I guess my point is, it seems like it hasn't been an issue in the past. It seems like it's a useless waste of time to do this, and/or if you were to enforce it, which you've never enforced it in the past, because there is a fine, that's going to create a giant cost for the city. You're going to have the vigilantes out telling their neighbors or calling in and saying, you know, the neighbor's only 3 inches, they got to be 4, and you got to go out and find them. And so now you have to send the inspector to every single house to make sure that this ordinance is complied with, if that's what your intent is, okay? And so you either do it or you don't do it. And so I think it's not a waste of the city's time and money to, and if indeed you wanted to do anything, I would go back to that original ordinance, which states that for every day you don't comply with the measurement and the address, it's $1 fine. So that means if I get called on it, you gotta send the inspector tomorrow, gives me $1 fine. Then he's gonna have to go back the next day and then inspect. Another $1 fine. I mean, you know, it's gonna drive people in this town crazy, and I think, you know, it kind of looks bad. And so if you wanted to do something, I would recommend you go back, instead of changing the size of the letters, dropping this silly fine and adjusting the ordinance that way.
Do what?
Adjusting the ordinance. Right now, the old ordinance still has the $1 fine in existence. So if the city is supposed to be fining you $1 a day if you don't comply, 2.5-inch house notice.
Wasn't there a reason for the 4-inch?
the 4-inch is what is stipulated in the International Builders Code and the International Fire Code. So we wanted to bring that up to date, modernize the city.
And do you not see where this could create a giant problem?
No, it hasn't been a problem for 51 years, other than the numbers are so small that...
Or no existence, and no enforcement, right?
Correct.
So what you're recommending is 4-inch numbers, no enforcement.
No, if you read the ordinance, it is the $1 a day fine.
And yet you haven't done that in the past. And so, you know, if you haven't done it in the past, what makes you think you're gonna do it in the future?
We were gonna give people a chance to update and get the numbers on the houses before we did that.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you that each one of those, there's buildings with numbers on the glass, there's some on the door, there's some on the mailbox.
It says visible from the street.
And the firehouse 2-inch letters are visible from the street. Thank you.
With a 4-inch minimum.
Also, to bring up a point, section 3, it says this goes full of effect, but I thought we said the fines in that would start after 1 year when we discussed this.
No, what I did discuss was, I asked when Dave was going to write the ordinance up, was if we pass it, I would like to see a mail stuffer to be included for 2 months, notifying those that have utilities such as electric, water, gas, sewer. Then that would give them a minimum of 2 months' notice. The ordinance intact, other than the size of the numbers, has been intact for 51 years. So the only thing we're changing is from 2.5 to 4. So that's, my intent was that if it was passed, then when Carol would have time to get a mail stuffer in, we would send that out for 2 months in a row. then everybody has utilities. We're gonna have some that are sitting empty, there is no utilities. But this should get probably 98% of the people, the residents, buildings within her.
But what I'm saying, section 3, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its final passage and approval. So if you approve this, it'll be your first reading, your next reading, then you're gonna send out flyers. According to this, you understand where I'm going with? There's a time lag.
I got you, it should say, I don't know, when did you want to do it?
But that, what I'm saying is, according to this,
Yeah.
as soon as you're done
If
with
we-
it,
at the second vote,
they're all in
it's-
trouble.
Yeah,
At the last meeting, you all discussed it December 31st.
That's what I thought.
I thought so
That's-
too.
That's why I made a note after the first of the year.
I think that was brought up, but we didn't agree upon it, but we can always put everything off, and I hope that emergency people that don't have the numbers, I hope there's no medical emergencies or fires or police actions that the people spend an extra 2 to 3 minutes to find the locations. So if we mail it out, this is June, I think Carol said you already had a stuffer for July. So we're looking at August and September, be October, and you're not looking at more than $5 to put the numbers up.
they're not expensive.
But the inspection is expensive. You're gonna have to go out and have the inspector go to each house, measure each existing one to see if they're in violation of code.
We'll take care of that part, you don't have to worry about that.
It's my money too.
To address Mayor's timing question, I think if you don't want to enforce it until December 31st, I think your options are, one, you could just table it and bring it back up in January of next year. Or two, I can go back and amend this for second reading to change section 3 to say this ordinance shall be in full force and effect commencing December 31st, and you can pass it at the next meeting. And then you can still do your flyers and everything to warn people that starting December 31st, this is what you need to have. If you, I'm not sure you agree on that though, but that's an option.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if you're gonna do this, at least give the people enough time to get it taken care of. I mean, we have a lot of elderly people, they're not gonna be able to do it themselves, they're gonna have to hire somebody or get a grandchild or somebody to take care of it for them, so it's a burden on them. You know, not everybody can just go out and change the numbers on their building, so I think, you know, I just don't feel it's right to say, hey, by the end of the month, you gotta have this done.
Well, I
That's
agree
just the
with
way I
that.
feel about it.
We need to give them a cushion period in there to get it.
If you're gonna go ahead and do it, it's up to you. Do you want to, any other discussion on it?
I'll make the motion that we amended that section 3, the full force and effective as of December 31st, 2020, or how Mr. Police wants to word that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second to that effect?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
No nays? So, do we, is that considered first read then?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. All right, old business, any old business? No old business, any new business? New business, we want to discuss a vacant Ward 1 Alderman seat to replace me. I have been in contact with Rick Oswick. Rick has agreed to fill my position. I've given his name to each one of the aldermen so they could contact him if he wanted to. Rick is a minister. His wife is Faye Osley, that is the public administrator in Gasconade County. He's just a down-to-earth, nice fellow, and I think he would be a good addition to the board. And so I would like to have someone make a motion to accept Rick Osley as to fill Ward 1 vacant seat and would be appointed at our next meeting.
I have a question.
Sure.
He's a guest house manager, that's not a conflict of interest, that won't get us in trouble?
Beg your pardon?
He's a guest house
Manager.
that doesn't cause a problem?
No, not necessarily. And I think if he's a proposed guest house manager that he doesn't own any guest houses, he just works as a manager?
No, actually, he's actually gonna manage the young lady that was just here.
Valerie.
Okay, well, if he was sitting as an alderman tonight, I think
He would have to abstain.
abstain with respect to the vote on her application.
Right.
You know, and I would have a talk with him and discuss whether or not he really has a pecuniary or a money interest in things ongoing that involve guest houses and relaxing restrictions or tightening restrictions on guest houses and things like that. But I don't think it necessarily takes him out of the vote on anything having to do with guest houses.
Okay. I make a motion to approve Rick Osley for Ward 1 Alderman.
I personally known Rick for many years. He's an honorable, honest man, and I think he would probably be a pretty good addition to that seat. I will second that.
First and second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
No nays? So moved. We'll move the motion, and motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Invoices for payment.
Bruce? I move we pay the bill.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The joke is, I'm always the one that says that for my family background. Okay, we approve the bid for the visitor profile study.
Question on that. That cost, now that will come out of the tourism tax fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Move approved. And I'll second.
First and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So moved. Reports are in your back or your pocket. Anything else?
Yes, I left a page of these at your desk there. We had, late Friday afternoon, a special request from the chamber. You know, they've been balancing, trying to decide what to do with 4th of July. And as you know, they're going to have the fireworks and the parade. But to consider possibly a few people coming and needing room for social distancing, they're requesting that their application be amended to close Work Street after the parade.
We discussed this, Wharf Street would be closed for additional seating, it would only be open to people, handicapped people or people limited mobility would be allowed in there.
Do we, the chief, you were involved with that also, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so voters in that are there during the day, have a limited time to get out or something, or is that?
Right, if we have a certain time, or the employees are at the fireworks show events.
Okay. Did we have a motion to approve?
Wait,
More
I'd like to
questions,
say
I'm sorry.
something. I've had a question too. Since this is going on, the hospital is going to do the firecracker 5K. If I get the application filled out and turned in, can you approve that too? That's that morning.
I have no problem with it, it's up to you all.
And we still have another meeting, so that can be
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that part.
Okay.
And we have a park board meeting next week, it has to be presented to them too, so,
Okay.
yeah.
I will move to approve the chamber's application.
Motion to approve, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye. Do we need a motion for that firecracker 500, or is that part of it?
That'll be after the park.
Yeah,
board.
we have a park
Meeting,
meeting.
okay.
Motion so moved. If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Good job, you did it. I make a motion to end the meeting.
Motion second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank everyone for coming.
All right, Bruce.
You gotta bang that guy.
Well, my problem was, you know, my auctioneering skill, every time I do that, I would go, next item up to 25, 30.
Do I hear a motion not to have a second? We can say aye.
Can you what?